You've probably heard the name whispered around, right? Skull and Bones. It's one of those names that just echoes through the corridors of American power. Well, today we're diving into the pretty wild claims made in Anthony C. Sutton's book, America's Secret Establishment. It tries to pull the curtain back on this super mysterious secret society at Yale.
So it all starts here, on the campus of Yale University, with this very strange, windowless building. For more than 100 years, the students there have had a nickname for it: the Tomb. And what goes on behind those walls? Well, that's the real mystery.
So, what secrets are locked away in there? If you believe Anthony Sutton's research, that building is ground zero for a hidden network that has allegedly been pulling the strings of American history and even world events for generations. Let's dig into that claim.
To really get what Sutton's talking about, we first have to understand who he's pointing the finger at. And at the very heart of his claims is a group he calls, pretty chillingly, a Brotherhood of Death.
And here it is. This is their symbol, the skull and crossbones, with that really cryptic number, 322. The official name is simply the Order, and it's a secret society founded way back in 1833 at Yale. Its members are sworn to absolute total silence.
And just so you know, this isn't some modern internet myth. What you're looking at here is a formal announcement for one of their weekly meetings from 1882. The Order has a long, documented, and very, very private history right there on campus.
And the membership? Oh, the membership. According to Sutton's book, the rosters read like a who's who of America's most powerful families. See this list from 1917? Right there, you'll find the name Prescott Sheldon Bush, who just so happens to be the father and grandfather of two future American presidents.
And this isn't a recent thing. That connection to the absolute highest levels of power, it was baked in from day one. The Order was co-founded by General William Huntington Russell and a guy named Alphonso Taft. Taft would go on to become the Secretary of War, and his son, William Howard Taft, would become both President and Chief Justice of the United States.
So you're probably wondering, where did all this information even come from? The whole foundation of the book rests on a mysterious batch of documents that the author Anthony Sutton claimed he received from a source who wanted to stay anonymous. Let's take a look at what he says he found inside.
Let's hear it in his own words. This is how Sutton describes what kicked his whole investigation into high gear. He says he got this big package, and inside were what he claims were the internal membership lists of the Order, lists that went back decades. He wrote that as he started reading the names, a formerly fuzzy world became crystal clear.
Now, it's worth noting, this guy wasn't just some random person. Before writing this book, Sutton was a respected academic, a research fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford. And he argued that these documents weren't just names on a page. He saw them as a blueprint for a hidden power structure running through America.
So he's digging through these lists, and what does he find? He claims he identified this core group of about 20 to 30 families. Names like these kept popping up again and again, generation after generation. To him, this suggested that influence was being passed down not just through family, but through the secret club too.
Okay, so Sutton's book lays out the who, but honestly, the really mind-bending part of his theory is the how. He makes this explosive argument that the Order doesn't just sit on its power, it actively manipulates history. And it supposedly does this using a very specific philosophical playbook called the Hegelian dialectic.
So what on earth is the Hegelian dialectic? It sounds super complicated, I know, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. Think of it like a recipe for creating change. First, you have the way things are now. That's the thesis. Then you create or support an opposing force. That's the antithesis. Then you let the two clash. That conflict creates a totally new situation called the synthesis.
And here is the absolute key to Sutton's entire theory. Whoever gets to manage that conflict gets to control the final outcome. So if you secretly create or fund both sides of a fight, you can steer the result, that synthesis, to be exactly what you wanted all along. For the Order, Sutton alleges, this manufactured conflict is the engine they use to shape the world.
Sutton traces this whole philosophy back to what he calls a troika of really influential early members. You see, all three of them went to study philosophy in Berlin back in the 1850s, which was the world's hotspot for Hegelian thinking. The book alleges they brought this whole dialectical method back with them to be the Order's secret master plan for America.
All right, so this is where the theory leads to some of the book's most shocking claims. Because if you want to control a conflict, you have to manage both sides. And according to Sutton, that means you have to finance both sides, even if one of those sides is your enemy.
This is really the heart of Sutton's historical argument. He's saying that members of the order, using their power on Wall Street and big industry, have over and over again funded opposing movements and even opposing countries, all to create the conflicts that would lead to their desired outcome.
And the book presents some pretty explosive examples to back this up. Over on the left, that's Sutton's diagram. It alleges that Wall Street firms with deep ties to the order, like Brown Brothers Harriman, actually helped finance the early Soviet Union. Then on the right, that's a 1941 U.S. military intelligence memo claiming that Standard Oil ships were refueling Nazi submarines. For Sutton, this was proof of the whole financing both sides idea in action.
The book goes even deeper on that alleged Nazi connection. It zooms in on the Union Banking Corporation in New York, where Prescott Bush was a director. This bank was financially tied to Fritz Thyssen, who was one of Hitler's most important German financiers. Sutton argues this wasn't just a simple business deal. He claims it was the order building up its antithesis for a giant future conflict.
So, if we follow the book's logic, what's the ultimate goal here? What is this synthesis that all of this supposedly manufactured conflict is supposed to lead to? What's the endgame?
Sutton's book comes to a stark conclusion. The endgame is the creation of a new world order. But he doesn't mean some vague conspiracy. He defines it as a very specific goal, a global society all centrally planned and managed by a technical elite. A world where the state is supreme and individual freedom is, well, a thing of the past. To support this, Sutton actually analyzed the career paths of the order's members from the documents he had, and he found their influence wasn't spread out evenly. It was massively concentrated in the sectors you'd need to control society: law, politics, finance, and media. But fields like the arts or engineering? Barely any representation, according to his data.
But Sutton doesn't just end his book on a note of complete doom and gloom. He argues that the very thing the order supposedly wants to stamp out, individualism, is also its greatest weakness. He believed that the only real defense against a top-down, centrally planned world is a massive grassroots commitment to individual liberty.
In the end, Sutton's book is a full-throated challenge to the official story of history we're often told. And it leaves all of us with one very powerful question to think about. If history is always written by the victors, who exactly is holding the pen?